And I know that every week into this church, we got people that are under bondage of all kinds. We got some that are under the bondage of addiction, some that are under the bondage to relationships that they know they shouldn't be in their lives, but they can't shake them. Some that are under the bondage of just a destroyed self-image, some that are under the bondage of being controlled by money or controlled by the praise of people. Some are overwhelmed by the burden of trying to please God or trying to please others. Some feel crushed by the burden of trying to sustain themselves, to take care of their family, to provide for themselves, to make life work. Jesus proclaims in Matthew, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." It's what I wish I could get some of you to see about the gospel, because you think of it exactly the opposite. You think that coming to Jesus takes you from a place of rest, moral rest, to where you got to feel guilty all the time and you got burdens on you. And my job every week is to tell you how bad you are at doing them and make you feel guilty and put more burden on you. That's not the gospel. The gospel is that it begins in rest. It begins in rest by me proclaiming to you that the price for your sin has been paid, not 1 ounce by you, but all by Jesus. That God gives you his favor, not in response to how well you do, how much you pray, how much you read the Bible. He gives his favor to you as a gift in Jesus Christ. Yes, you work as a Christian. Yes, you'll find Christians are often very busy people. But we do it not in order to earn the favor of God. We do it in joyful response to having been given the favor of God. And that's a totally different kind of work. One leads you to weariness because it's never enough. The other leads you to overflowing joy, where you just say, "I love doing what I do because it's the overflow of my heart." There are many of you this weekend that are overwhelmed by this burden of trying to please people. All your life, you've tried to earn the acclaim of others. When you have Jesus' favor, you find yourself relieved of the burden of always trying to prove yourself to everybody. Early on in my ministry, I realized I was tired. I wasn't tired because I was working too hard. I wasn't tired because the demands of this church were too much. I was tired because I was always living for the approval of different groups of people, and it never seemed to be enough. You'll never realize how tired you are from trying to earn the love and the attention of others until you've been freed from it for even just a little bit. We actually got to see a great example of that this week. Many of you probably saw this. It was on Tuesday night, I think. 2 Olympic divers from the United States who won the silver medal. How many of you saw this? David Badaya, I think, and Steele Johnson, if I got their names right. So they get the silver medal, and the NBC reporter goes up after they win, and she asks a couple of questions, and then she asked, I think it was David, she said, she said, were you really nervous for this last dive, knowing that this was it? Like this would determine whether or not you would get a medal? And she puts the mic in his face, and he said, no. He said, because we know that our identity is in Christ, not how well we do on this platform. And that means that whether we get a medal or not, our identity is fixed, and we don't depend on this or placing in a medal. We don't depend on that for our identity. It's in Christ. Watch this other interview where he was explaining. He said, if we belly flop, we get a perfect 10. We come down with the same identity we were up on the platform with, and that identity is in Christ. The interviewer was like, turns to the other guy, puts it in his face, and this guy was like, he's like, well, I'm going to say my friend David said it exactly right. Our identity is in Christ, not in how well we perform. Do you understand the confidence that can give you in life? When you are relieved of the burden of trying to prove yourself by how pretty you are, when you no longer feel like I got to be the prettiest girl in school, I got to weigh this, or I got to look like that, or I got to make this much money, or I got to dress like this in order to earn people's approval, it just suddenly becomes freeing, because I now have the opinion, the highest opinion of the only one whose opinion really matters, and that frees me from tyranny to your opinions. Some of you are under that bondage, and what Jesus says is, I can give you rest from that. And then what's even more, when you know that you're his favored child, when you really realize you're his favored child, the worries of the world lift off of your shoulders. Because you start to say things like, Paul, what then shall I say to these things? If God is for me, who could be against me? He who did not spare his own son, but freely gave him up for us all, will he not also with him graciously give us all things? It won't the one, Jesus said, who Won't the one who knows how many hairs are on your head and knows when one sparrow falls out of the sky, won't he also care for you? Why should I be discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? Because Jesus is my portion. My constant friend is he. His eyes on the sparrow, I know he watches me. You'll find that there is a rest that goes with being a child of God that is freeing like nothing else can. So Jesus says, come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And that is what some of you most need this weekend, is you need rest from trying to find acceptance, rest from trying to prove yourself all the time, rest from bearing the weight of the world on your shoulders. That rest is in Jesus.